When you're informing them about something, you can talk to them at a very high level of resolution, which you do with your child. Here's how you slice up some broccoli, right? But then you move up the abstraction and say, here's how you act like a civilized person at the dinner table, right? And that's part of being a good person. So you can tell stories about, I just went and saw Logan, which I really liked, by the way. It's super violent, but I really did like it. It's got a very elegant mythological structure, which is not surprising. But there's a scene in this Logan movie, it's not a spoiler, he has this child with him who has who's been raised roughly in a laboratory, and she has absolutely no table manners. And so they're sitting at a dinner with some people that they've run into, and she's, you know, eating like a total barbarian, and of course everybody's eyebrows are raised, like, where did this person come from? So the fact that that high order behavior isn't there is something that's of extraordinary interest to everyone. And so, you know, you teach your children micro strategies and you teach them macro strategies. Some of the macro strategies you're teaching them you don't even understand, because you know the strategies, they're built into you because of an evolutionary process, roughly speaking. And you say things like, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it matters how you play the game, and you don't understand what that means, although you know it's right, and you try to act that out for your children, and they incorporate it in their action even though they can't represent it. They cannot come up with a fully articulated representation of what that means. And so they're like children, the Piagetian children. Children can only play by themselves to begin with, while they're integrating themselves internally. Then they start to play in parallel with other children. So you're two. You play your game, that child plays his or her game. A little interaction, but you can't unite the games. Then you're between 2 and 4, you start to be able to unite the games. And you can either do that by acting them out. You can do this even with a younger child. They can catch peekaboo very rapidly. But once you're between 2 and 4 and you start getting linguistic, you can start saying, well, let's play this game. And that means we're going to unite our attention towards a particular goal. We're going to unite our motor activity and maybe cooperate and compete towards that goal. It's the beginning of the social structure. It's the beginning of the social structure. And you get really good at that between 2 and 4. But you don't necessarily know what you're doing. You can't say it. So Piaget's experiments indicated that if you take children, maybe they've got to the point where they can play quite a social game, maybe they're 5 or 6, they're playing marbles. You take them out of the game and you say, okay, tell me the rules of the game of marbles. They give incoherent representations. Why? Because their behavior is more sophisticated than their representation. You see, as soon as you understand that, that is a wild thing to understand, because it answers the question, for example, how can you have dreams that tell you things you don't know? You think, well, how the hell can that possibly be? You're coming up with the damn dream. How can the dream tell you things you don't know? Or analogously, how can people tell stories that contain information that they don't understand? And the answer is that information is coded in our behavior. Okay, so we'll go back to a chimpanzee troop. All the chimpanzees in the troop know the dominance hierarchy structure. But if you take a chimpanzee out from the troop and say, what's the dominance structure? The chimpanzee is going to do whatever a chimpanzee does. It's not going to have a little conversation with you about the nature of the dominance hierarchy. So it can act out its knowledge, and it might even be able to represent it in image, but it can't articulate it. Well, why would we be any different? We aren't, obviously, because we're more complex than we understand. So the fact that we're more complex than we understand means that we contain information that we cannot articulate. Why can't that reveal itself? It does all the time. You have a revelation. It's aha, I get it. Well, what is that? Maybe you're in psychotherapy and we talk about some things about your past and we say, well, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. We say, look, there's a pattern, whap! And it's overwhelming. It's like now there's a concordance between your knowledge and the things that you're acting out. And that's what comes as a revelation.